Hello, welcome. We are going to give people a chance to come on in and then we will go ahead and get started. It's great to see the names of some people I recognized coming in. We are going to give people a chance to come on in and then we will go ahead and get started. Good to see people. Thanks for joining us. All right, I am going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jamie and I am with the Association of Presbyterian Church Educators. And we are very excited to be hosting this webinar this evening with Katie from Presbyterian Publishing, who is here to talk to us about a new curriculum, Follow Me. So thank you so much for joining us, Katie, and for sharing about this new curriculum with us. We're excited.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. So let me get us started. A few things as we do get started. First of which is that we're recording tonight's webinar. So if you need to come back and catch the replay later, you totally can. Additionally, the slides from tonight's presentation will be available to you. We're going to be emailing them out once this presentation's over. And on those slides, you will find clickable links that you can hover your mouse over and click on one of them, and it will take you to the web page or video or whatever was referenced on the internet. And so those are going to be there for you to use after the fact. You'll also notice that I have some captioning happening. This is actually done via PowerPoint. There's a great box you can check that will auto caption PowerPoints for you anytime you go into presentation mode. So that is where those captions are coming from, and there is not a way to turn those off on your end. If you don't like them, I'm sorry, you are stuck watching captions. Let's see, anything else that I want to say about formalities? I think that's it. As Jamie mentioned, I'm Katie Snyder. I'm a certified Christian educator, and I'm the curriculum specialist and point coordinator for Presbyterian USA Store, also known as Growing Faith Resources, which is our new curriculum imprint that we're really excited about. So without further ado, let's jump in and talk about Follow Me, Biblical Practices for Faithful Living, which is our new curriculum. This is coming out July 2021, so just in a couple of months, which is so exciting because this is such a big, bold, new thing. And I am excited to tell you about it. So let's dive in and get going with it. So this curriculum is really meant for your entire congregation. And I do mean like everybody. This curriculum is centered around practices. And we define a practice as a verb, something you do. And it's something our practices come from things that Jesus did, said, embodied, and things that Christians have routinely done over the centuries. So that is where all of these are coming from. Now, you may be thinking about practices and wondering, why would we choose to have a curriculum that looked at the Bible through a lens of practices instead of just studying like the Old Testament and then the New Testament, or, you know, working its way through a specific book over a longer period of time? Well, we've done a lot for the last, I don't know, century or more with the model of believing, behaving, belonging, meaning that we believe something about the faith that we have. We believe something about God. We believe something about the Bible. And that changes our behavior. And then once our behavior is changed, then we belong to the Christian community. And what we've seen in recent years, especially I think as we start to come out of the other side of this pandemic, is that we are shifting that view. And now we are shifting to more of a behaving, belonging, believing model. And this really works well when you think about different faith practices and why that's becoming such a buzzword right now. So practices, they form our identity and they transform us from the inside out. They're almost like faith habits in a way. And so the beautiful thing about a practice is that it's something you do, and you can do it by yourself, but you usually do it in community as well. And that then leads to faith, because you all are doing something together. It helps create an identity and a link, a relationship between you and the community, and that results in faith. And the best example I can think of this from real life is my own experience growing up. I grew up in a church that allowed young children to take communion. And so my first communion memory started about age 4. And at age 4, I didn't understand everything about communion, but I understood as much as a 4-year-old can understand about communion. I understood that this practice was sacred, that it was part of our faith, and that I watched everyone else around me in the pews, my family, the people in the pew in front of me, behind me, the pastors, everybody in the church was engaging in this practice at the same time on Sundays, right? And we all did it together. And so doing this thing helped me understand that this is what being a Christian is about, right? And doing this thing together helped me understand that I was part of this community that did this thing that made us different from other people. And that is part of what came together to help build my faith. And the more I took communion over the years, the more I understood the purpose of it, the more I understood the liturgy that was spoken with it, the more I studied it on my own, whether that was through like a Sunday school class or even just private study. And all of those things really helped take root and grow into faith that I have now. And so that's kind of the model that we're going for with all of this, is that we're doing things together, which creates a community that leads to faith. So there's lots of ways to come to faith, and this is just one model that's really taking off right now. So let's talk about the curriculum though. So Follow Me has 36 different practices that you can choose from, and they're all kind of self-contained units, right? So that means that each practice is its own little bundle where you kind of dive into that practice and say, what is this practice about? How do I use it? What do we do with it? That kind of a thing. And you explore each of these practices for multiple sessions. So you're going to study each of these practices for at least 4 sessions. We do have a couple of 6 sessions units as well. And those are kind of set up to be ideal for Lent, but they don't have to be. I mean, practice spiritual disciplines is one that we have slotted for Lent, but you could do that any time of the year. So the thing to note about this chart that you're seeing on the screen of 36 different practices is that you could do this anytime. It doesn't have to be in the order that you see this. This is the order that the units are being released, but what we're doing here is creating a library of practices that you can choose from. And so you can pick and choose the units that are going to work best for your congregation. And you're going to study each of these practices from a personal perspective. So how do I engage with this practice and what does it mean for my life? But also from a community perspective. So how does our church engage in this practice? And then how do we worship with this practice? And then how does our world engage with this practice? And how do we take that practice out into the real world? Because at the end of the day, faith should be more than just something we do on a Sunday morning, right? It's something we should take into our Monday morning world as well, which is what my home pastor used to love to say it for his benedictions. So let's take a look even further into this curriculum. These are the different components that you're going to see for Follow Me. The first piece that we're going to dive into deeply is the Congregational Guide. And this is like it sounds. There's something in here for every person in your congregation. We also have some great infographic posters to go along with each practice. There's going to be one poster for every single practice. And then there's also an additional set of 12 posters that are called the Bible Basic Poster Set. And these are really great because they have sort of the foundational pieces that you need as you think about teaching faith, right? Then we have several leaders' guides. We have one for young children, which is ages 3 to 5. We have a multi-age children's leaders guide, which is ages 6 to 10. We have a youth leaders guide, which is ages 11 to 18. And we have an adult leaders guide. Now, we also have an adult reflection guide, which you can use individually or in a small group. And we'll talk more about the adult pieces and how they work together as we dig into this further. But for now, let's start with the Congregational Guide and let's take a look at what you find inside this piece, because this is such a pivotal piece. You're going to find so much in here that you can do with your congregation. And so let's dive into that. The first piece that's in here is the foundational essay, and this was written by a biblical scholar. Now, we had so many great scholars to tap into for these essays. People like Lynn Bobb and Michelle Bartel and Cynthia Campbell and David Gambrell, Tom Long, Bridget Green, all kinds of great scholars came together to write these essays for us. And these essays are the backbone of the entire curricula. So each essay is based on one practice. So there's one essay per practice. And in this essay, which it's about 5 to 7 pages, 3 to 5 pages, somewhere in that ballpark. In this essay, the author is exploring different aspects or dimensions of the practice and talking about where this practice shows up in the Bible and where it's shown up in history. So it's a great piece for background information, which is why we put it in the Congregational Guide. But we've also included it in all of the leaders' guides and in all of the adult pieces, because we felt like this was such a great dive into whatever practice you're studying that everybody could use that background information. The reason we put it in the Congregational Guide, though, was that we figured folks who are in charge of faith formation are going to want this the most. And we even thought that pastors may want to use this as a basis for a sermon series around the practice. So you could take this, build a sermon series from it, and then that's a really great way to add to the experience of your entire church engaging with a specific practice for a few sessions, right? But we didn't stop there thinking about worship. We also created worship helps. And these are phenomenal 2-page instructions. And there are one of these for every session. So you're going to see a minimum of 4 of these with every practice. And so this allows you to really craft a service around a specific practice. So if your pastor's already using the foundational essay for their sermon background, the worship helps are going to just add to that, add more scaffolding. So there are hymn and song suggestions in here based on the practice that you're studying. There are different liturgies that you can just plug and play into your bulletin or however you communicate with your worshipers what's going on in the service. So things like call to worship, prayers, benedictions, all kinds of great stuff. We've also included some liturgical actions, which are our kind of fancy way of saying stuff you could do in your service that would enhance the worship experience around that practice. Some of these things might be kind of simple. Some of them might be a little more elaborate. Things like how certain decorations you may want to consider in your chancel area if you have one. Other things might be an activity or something you do in the worship service, like maybe you give everyone a sticky note and ask them to write something on it and stick it up somewhere. Or maybe there's something we want folks to drop into the offering plate or something like that. So all kinds of neat stuff, creative practices that you can use in the worship setting. Moving right along, the cafe discussion guide is the next piece in this congregational guide that I want to talk with you about. And this is a super easy, no prep discussion-based session. And there are going to be multiple sessions in every practice. So you'll see a minimum of 4 of these. And they're very easy for anybody to just pick up and lead real fast. They're 2-sided and they have some great ideas, and some of them involve different kinds of discussions. Some of them have like a little worksheet aspect to them. And these are great for very informal small group settings. So that may be things like a Zoom call or a coffee shop gathering, or maybe you have like a pub theology, or you have a group of people that meets once a week to discuss what the pastor's preaching on. This would be a great thing for them to use. It's a discussion-based kind of session. And I would like to also add that this is great not only for adults, it also works for young adults, and it's also really great for youth, especially if you have youth that like more of that discussion style session. It's right up their alley. Next up is the intergenerational session, which is something I'm excited about because intergenerational ministry is really taking off right now. And with intergenerational ministry, I've seen a lot of folks struggle with how do we start? And this is a great way. So we've included a full-fledged session plan, a full-fledged intergenerational session for every single practice. So you can use this as a kickoff event, or you could use this as a wrap-up celebration as you celebrate the fact that you've finished engaging with a practice. But honestly, this could go anywhere that makes sense for your church calendar. But this is just a great time for folks to come together as partners in learning, regardless of whether there are children present or what kind of family makeup you have, whether you are, single, or you have a spouse, or you have kids, or you used to have kids that are now grown. Whatever your family conglomeration, this intergenerational session does a great job of bringing people together to engage in the practice. The next piece of this is the curriculum connections. And this is really, I think, important for any educators in the room or anybody really looking at faith formation from kind of that 30,000 feet like setting. And so what this is it allows you to see a couple of highlights from each of the age groups. So session by session, you get a kind of overview of what everybody's up to. And I think this is something that is important because if you find that the children are making a banner, let's say, you may want to find somewhere to display it. Maybe that's in a hallway somewhere if you have a church building. Maybe that's like in the sanctuary for worship. If you find that maybe the multi-age children are writing a prayer, maybe you want to feature that in the worship service or have it read at a committee meeting or something like that. Maybe the adults are writing some kind of testimony or doing something like that, and maybe that's something you want to plug in somewhere to be shared. So there's all kinds of ways that this gives you kind of room to play and room to really make more intentionality into the practice that you're trying to immerse yourself in as a congregation. Now, we have not forgotten families. Families need support at home. We know this. That's definitely something that the pandemic has revealed to us, and something we've known for a long time that goes back to Deuteronomy, right? So we have practicing the practice at home. This is a two-sided sheet. There is one of these for every single practice, and it's a great thing to send home to your families. You can send it home electronically, you can photocopy it, send it home that way, however you want to do it. But what's on here are some conversation starters. So questions that get families thinking about the practice. How does our family do this practice? When have we, welcomed other people into our home? How do we welcome other people when they come over? Should we be thinking about that? Who do we not welcome in our home and why? Thinking about a specific practice and how to engage with it and how our family does this. And what are things our family might wonder about as we think about this practice, maybe for the first time, or maybe as we're looking on it with fresh eyes. The other things on here, though, are a lot of really great activities that families can do. And some of these are really easy. Some of these are things like share stories that relate to whatever practice you're talking about. So if the unit is baptism, maybe they'll ask you to share baptism stories or photos or something like that. But you also have some more complex things like, well, why don't we take a field trip somewhere? Maybe that's to a food pantry, or maybe you're going to go to an orchard and do gleaning or something like that as a family. So there's opportunities for service, there's opportunities for things you can do inside your home, all kinds of great things that families can do together. We've also included this practicing the practice at home in the Young Children's Leaders Guide and the Multi-Age Children's Leaders Guide, in addition to our Congregational Guide. We want to make sure that folks have access to this and can send this information home to families pretty readily. The final piece that I want to talk about for the Congregational Guide is the Children's Worship Leaflets. I love these. They're so great. On these, they always come with a similar sort of format. You're going to have 4 of these minimum, so 1 for each session. And there's always going to be a puzzle or a game of some kind. There's always going to be something for the kids to color. There's always going to be a adapted Bible story on them. And there's a couple of things that families could do together around the practice at home. So this is ideal for giving to your kids to use during worship, but it's also a great thing to send home electronically too. So a lot of great options for families in this congregational guide. But now we're going to change pace a little bit, and I'm going to talk more about those infographic posters that I mentioned before. If you are familiar with Big God, Big Questions, which was a confirmation curriculum that came out recently, we introduced infographic posters for the first time, and they were a big hit. If you need really good art and really good theology, we got you covered, which is much harder to find than you would think until these came out. So we brought back the same artist because she did such a phenomenal job for us. And we heard some great feedback from everybody about the Big God, Big Questions posters. The first thing we heard was they aren't big enough. So these posters for Follow Me actually are 18 inches by 24 inches. So that is like big standard poster size, like regular poster size. And as I mentioned before, there will be one of these for every single practice. And we have that Bible Basics set, which includes all kinds of different posters in it that are going to help you teach faith. Things like how to look up stuff in the Bible, what the different books are, what does the Lord's Prayer mean? Just different kinds of things that you're going to find useful. We've got lots of timelines in there. So a lot of great stuff. These are also available in a downloadable form, and I'll talk more about that at the end. So now let's jump into our leaders' guides. All of our leaders' guides more or less follow the same format. They're going to have some of the same pages. They're just going to be adapted a little bit for the different age groups, because every age and stage is slightly different in their approach and in what they need. So you're going to find the structure and the pieces are the same, but the content is going to really be specific for your age group. So what we're going to do is take a look inside of the multi-age leaders guide, but know that pretty much all of the age groups look similar. Now they all have different color coding themes, but basically the guts of this thing are going to be the same. So let's take a look. So the beginning sections of the leaders guides just kind of go over what the practice is and a couple of notes and helps for teachers. So we've got the benefits of working with whatever age group you're working with. We've got information about basic supplies that we assume you have. We talk about, especially for the children, Flyaway books and how we have worked our Flyaway picture books into this curriculum. We talk about including all kinds of children, so making sure you're able to accommodate any child that needs accommodation. We do provide accommodations for many of the activities that require it, but sometimes you're going to run into a unique situation and you're still going to have to adapt some things. And so this section just gives you some ideas to get the wheels turning about the best way to do that. We also have a good overview of the practice as a whole. So where does it come from in the Bible? How are children going to connect with this practice, and what is this practice all about? What does it mean? And then we kind of get into each session. Now, in each session, that's where we get more specific details about the practice and about the different aspect that we're studying that week. There's also a goal and a prayer for the leader. And then I want to highlight the little activity symbols that you're seeing. You saw them on the last page, and you're seeing them on this page too. These help your leaders kind of pick and choose the activities at a glance that are going to work best for your group. And each age group actually has a different activity symbol set. So the activity symbols that you're seeing here for our multi-age are not the same activity symbols you'll see for young children or for youth. So keep that in mind. We've really tried to custom fit these to the different age groups and the different places where people are in the different developmental stages. But those are really helpful as you're thinking about what activities you want to do with your different groups of kids or youth. Now, all of the leaders guides, follow the same session format. We start with getting started, which is kind of our gathering time. All of the age groups and the adults too have a opening ritual that they do that is for the entire length of that practice. And so that's a great thing to do at home or in worship as well. And then we introduce the practice. So what is this practice? What is it? Then we find the practice in the Bible, which is when we spend time digging into the scripture and looking at where do we see this practice show up. Now, I want to say one quick word about that. Each age group may or may not study the same biblical passage for a specific practice. Everybody is always going to be studying the same practice and sort of the same aspect, dimension, or a way of looking at that particular practice. But they might come at it from a different biblical text. And there's a reason for this. Not all biblical texts are exactly what we would call kid-friendly. Some of them are really, a lot of abstract thinking that kids, and even in some cases youth, aren't quite there yet, but adults love that kind of deeper Bible study engagement, right? So this has allowed us to use biblical texts that will really work well for each age group as we introduce this practice. And the other thing that we see, that this really helps to do, is that, all of these practices, they're pretty universal. They're not just in one place in the Bible. They're in lots of places. And lots of different characters from the Bible study these practices or engage in these practices in different ways. And that's a good thing. And so this allows us to really engage with the practice in different stories of the Bible in different ways. And it allows families who come together and talk about what they're learning to say, oh, yeah, we talked about prayer and we learned about how David prayed. Well, we learned about how Paul prayed. Well, we learned about how Jesus prayed. And so suddenly there's a lot more room for conversation around the table or in the car or wherever you are to talk about the different Bible stories and how they relate to the practice that you're studying. So back to the session flow. After we look at where the practice is found in the Bible, we go to the finding the practice all around us, which is for children, or finding the practice then and now for our youth and adults. And the reason for this separation is just youth and adults have a concept called history that they understand, and children are still pretty fluid on the idea that history is a long time ago. So this just kind of helps us differentiate. So with the children, we focus on where do we see this practice going on in the world or in our church or in our neighborhood or in our family. And with adults, we look at things like how have Christians practiced this practice over the centuries, right? In addition to looking at where else do we see this. Then after we've looked at where we see this practice show up in our world, we practice the practice. So this is the part where we get to try it on. It's like putting on, new clothes or something and seeing how it fits and how it might work for you. So we get to do this together collectively. And then we have our sending time, which is the section called Follow Jesus. And that is the time where we are blessed and sent out to go practice this practice in the world. Take that Sunday morning faith into the Monday morning world. That's the goal. So that's kind of how the sessions flow. I want to say a couple more things about teacher helps. One, you'll see that there are some asterisks. Those are where the teacher notes are. So if you're looking for adaptations for activities or just some other helpful teaching tips, that asterisk is going to be your best friend. The other thing that we did that was different was if you need supplies for a specific activity, you will find it in the sidebars of the session plan. And we've done it in such a way that whatever you need for that activity supplies wise is listed next to that activity. So if you are going to do an activity, you know exactly what you need. And if you're not going to do an activity, you know exactly which supplies you don't need to bother with. So just trying to really make this super easy for anyone to pick up and read. The final thing that you're going to see in the session plans is the resource pages. Some of these will be in black and white. Some of them will be in color. Some of them could be a worksheet. Some of them could be a map or a game board or a puzzle or a puppet stage. I have seen everything with these resource pages. So there's all kinds of great ways for you to further use the session with everybody. And it varies how many pages there will be. It just kind of depends on what the session needed. A couple of other special unique things. For the Young Children's Leaders Guide, there will always be a adapted children's Bible story. And that way the leaders have something that is a very easy, approachable story to read to really young kids. The Bible sometimes uses lots of big words, and this is just going to be a much more easy, more like a story Bible approach to the text. And then our multi-age children will mostly read from the Bible, but sometimes have an adapted Bible story. You know, if the passage is really long, maybe we'll do an adapted Bible story to shorten it a little bit. Or if there's like multiple passages that we're trying to combine, we may include an adapted Bible story, but the multi-age children will not always have an adapted Bible story. It'll only be sometimes. The adapted Bible story from the Young Children's Leader's Guide will also be used in the worship leaflets. That's in the Congregational Guide. So just so you know, those two adapted Bible stories are the same. Okay, I want to talk about youth for just a minute. We tried very hard to get youth some good curricula, because we all know that needs to exist. We got some great writers who really know youth to write for us. We have a fantastic youth editor that's working on this. We're really excited for what this brings to the table. Now, if you remember from the beginning, I said this was for ages 11 to 18. That's a really wide developmental age gap that we're talking about. 11-year-olds and 18-year-olds are two very different groups of people. And they are in very different maturities and developmental phases in their life, right? So we have a special set of activity symbols for youth, and I want to talk about them very specifically here for a minute. One of the things we made sure to do was to have abstract thinking activities and concrete thinking activities throughout the Youth Leader's Guide. And this means that we'll have some of both types in every section. So what this means for you is that you're going to have a choice of activities to choose from, but you're also going to always have something that is abstract thinking to pick from and something that is concrete thinking to pick from. What this also means is that if you divide your youth into different groups, a younger group maybe and an older group maybe, or a concrete thinking group and an abstract thinking group, you will have enough material to basically use this leader guide twice, so to speak. So you could use the same leader guide, but teach completely different material to both of those groups because of the extra amount of activities that are in here. So I just wanted to let you know we've thought about this. We've done a lot of intention behind it. We're really trying to make sure that we've reached the youth the way that they need to be reached. So that is in there. Let's talk about adults. So the Adult Leader's Guide is different from the Children and the Youth Leader Guide in only that there's no activity symbols and it's black and white. And that is because the Adult Reflection Guide, which is really the heart and soul of the adult piece for Follow Me, is in full color. And it's a beautiful kind of workbook journal that I'll show you what it looks like in just a minute. But the way this works is that we envision all adults have their own copy of the Adult Reflection Guide. And then you would use the Adult Leader's Guide to craft a small group using the Adult Reflection Guide. So you would only need like one leader's guide, but you'd need multiple Adult Reflection Guides. The other thing I want to point out is that we were able to utilize our foundational essay authors in a way other than just writing. We were able to contact them and get them to agree to share their personality with us through video. So for our adults, we have at least 5 videos for every practice coming out. There will be more for our Lent units, obviously, but there is going to be a video that talks about the overview of the practice and some background, a little intro from the writer themselves. And then there's going to be an additional video for every single session. So these are not long videos. They're just meant to be kind of discussion starter videos and kind of kick off your small group experience as you're engaging with these different practices each session. But they are going to be there, and they are going to be there for free on our YouTube channel, which is Growing Faith Resources, which I'll talk more about later. But I wanted to let you know that there is a video component for our adult piece. So let's dive into the adult reflection guide a little more so you can kind of see what it looks like on the inside. So for the adult reflection guide, like I said, it's kind of a journal, kind of a workbook. We left a lot of white space instead of lines. This allows folks who want to doodle or draw to do that, but it also allows folks to write if they'd like to. And so they start each of these with a unit overview where you get to kind of learn about what is this practice about that we're going to study. And they highlight the different sections or the different dimensions of the practice as you go forward. Then as you dive deeper into the adult reflection guide, you kind of see where more of that workbook comes out. And this one doesn't exactly have any examples, but in some of them, we have some pictures and art and things. Some of them are reflection questions. Some of them are things you can watch or look up. So there's all kinds of ways to engage with this guide as you look into it, as you kind of go further with the adult reflection guide. There's a lot of great ways to engage with this. And as you can see, like every page is different and full of color and full of good thought-provoking questions. And in the back of this, we've also included that foundational essay again, because we know there are those adults that want to go deeper. And for those of you wondering about the foundational essay, it is really good, well-rounded theology, but it's also really approachable. So even your adults who are not as like, let's go deep dive into the biblical scholarship of things, will find these essays approachable, which we think is really important. So now I want to talk a little bit about the different packages that we offer and some of the pricing. So we've put together a couple of packages to help you guys save some money. We've bundled some things together for you. What I want to say about each of these packages is that this is the price that you would pay for one practice. So if you bought the small scale package for Welcome All, it would just be the pieces for Welcome All. If you wanted to buy, let's say, Confess, that would be, you'd have to buy another package for Confess. But again, you're building a library of units. You can use these practices once you own them an infinite number of times. This is not like a quarterly curriculum where things become outdated. These are very timeless pieces that are going to be part of your library for as long as you would like to use them. So let's look at these packages in a little bit more detail. We have the small scale package, and that includes a congregational guide, a multi-age children's leaders guide, an adult leaders guide, and 5 adult reflection guides. And these are print only. You can buy the small scale package in either the print version or the download version. If you buy the downloaded version of any of the packages that we have, you're still going to get printed adult reflection guides. I'll talk about ways to get digital versions of the adult reflection guides in just a second. The next package is the large scale package. And this is for, this is if you want all of the pieces. So this includes one of everything and then 10 adult reflection guides. Again, you can buy this in the print version or you can buy this in the download version. And if you buy it in the download version, you will still get printed versions of the adult reflection guides. Now, you can also purchase each of these pieces individually. And if you would like the sort of digital version of the adult reflection guide, we are selling that through Amazon. You can buy that as an ebook, which is really cool. And what we found out is that Amazon will also allow you to buy ebooks in bulk. So if your church wants to order a bunch of ebooks and then have folks either reimburse the church or if you just want to gift them to people, you can do that. Amazon allows you to do that. So I thought that was really helpful information to pass along. Additionally, if you order from one of these packages but still need more adult reflection guides and you want the paper copies, we offer bulk pricing on our website. So if you order 10 or more, you get a price break. If you order 25 or more, you get an additional price break. So I wanted to make sure you knew about that. So now I want to talk about the infographic posters. These are sold completely separately from the packages because you only really need to buy these posters once, especially if you buy the sets, which is the best way to buy the posters, I will tell you. So we're breaking these out into sets of 12 posters. So the Bible Basics poster set is 12. We've grouped the practices based on when they're coming out by year. So everything coming out in the first program year is grouped as year 1. Everything coming out in the second year of program practices that are coming out in the second year of the program year are year 2, and so on. And you can buy these poster sets as either print or download. And if you want to buy just one single poster, you can do that, but you are limited to buying that only as the downloadable form. You cannot buy individual printed posters, mainly because you don't want to pay that price. It is very expensive to do posters individually like that. And we did not want you to have to pay that awful expensive cost. We also, though, just recently opened up bulk pricing available for our poster sets. So if you want to buy multiple sets of posters so that different age groups in your churches can have them, we now offer that. So more details will be coming out about that as we get that pricing structure more finalized and on our website. But just know that that is something that is on the table. So that is the nuts and bolts of how you order this curriculum. Now, I want to talk also about more places where you can learn about Follow Me. The first place you can learn more about Follow Me is on our YouTube channel, which is called Growing Faith Resources, which, as I mentioned at the beginning, is our new sort of curriculum imprint. And so at our YouTube channel, you can watch a trailer. We have a 3-minute trailer about this curriculum. So if you're looking for a good way to sum up everything I talked about tonight, watching that trailer is a great thing. It'll do it in 3 minutes, and I'm doing it in like 45. The other thing, though, is we have more videos coming, and we have a couple of other things out there already. We have a What is Follow Me video up there already, which just kind of goes over the nuts and bolts of it, and we did it in 10 minutes. The other videos that are coming, we have a congregational guide video. So this is just diving into that congregational guide. And that video is coming out very soon. And then we have each of the leaders' guides, and each of the different components are going to have their own video also coming soon. So we're really trying to step up our presence on YouTube and really trying to make sure that you have the most information possible to make an informed decision about what curriculum and what resources you're purchasing for your church. Now, as I mentioned, we have videos that'll be free on this Growing Faith Resources channel for the actual practices, for the adult portion of the curriculum, for the adult portion of Follow Me coming out too. So this summer, you will see 5 videos for Welcome All. You'll see 5 videos for Follow Jesus, and you'll see 5 videos for Confess. So that is a plethora of great stuff that you're going to want to take advantage of. So you'll want to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you know when we put up those new videos, and you can easily find them to not only share them with people in your congregation, people like your CE committee team or your session or something like that, but also so that you have those extra content pieces for the adults when it comes to those videos about these specific practices. So to kind of sum everything up, subscribe to that YouTube channel so you don't miss anything. If you're looking for more information about Follow Me, we have a fantastic website that is just chock full of everything. It's pcusastore.com/follow me curriculum. And there you can download the sampler, which is a huge document because it literally has one session of everything that I just went over tonight. So if you want to look at the insides of a specific leader's guide or of the congregational guide, or you want to read through a session plan, that sampler has you covered. You can see one of everything. So it's a lovely 92-page document. We also have some printed versions of that available. If you would like a printed copy of the sampler, please email me with your snail mail address, okay? And my email is here. You can click on it from the screen, and I'll drop it into the chat in a little while. In addition to being able to download the sampler on our website, you can pre-order you can actually, I think, pre-order the first 6 units. You can watch the trailer. It's actually right there embedded on the web page. And coming very soon, very, very soon, we have a free preaching guide on Follow Me. So as I mentioned, we have those foundational essays that your pastor can use to craft a sermon around the practices. What we've done is we've created this great chart that talks about each practice, the different aspects, and then the best text to preach from for that particular week. So if you've been looking, if your pastor likes to plan things in advance, be on the lookout. This guide is coming out very, 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 very soon. So be on the lookout for that. If you really liked this presentation tonight and would like to arrange something with your local, either your local educators group or your presbytery or maybe even your APSI region, please let us know. We'd be happy to share more about this curriculum with you. And last but not least, we're going to do some formal Q&A time right now. But if you think of questions later, or if there's other questions that don't get answered here tonight, you can always email me. Part of my job is helping you figure out what's going to work best for your congregation. So with that, I will say thank you for giving me so much of your time tonight, and we will open the floor for questions.
Katie, there's a question in the chat actually that their Wi-Fi broke up and they were wondering if the curriculum was lectionary informed.
Okay, so if we're wondering, is the curriculum lectionary based, meaning that it follows the lectionary, the answer is no, it does not. Could you conceivably match it up with the lectionary? Possibly. Would I recommend doing this? The beautiful thing about this is that this is based on practices. And as I mentioned earlier, each age group doesn't necessarily use the same biblical story to study a practice. And so matching this up with the lectionary is possible. And we've talked about possibly in the future putting out a chart that would help you do that. But it's not going to be the easiest task to do because we don't pick only lectionary texts. If we did, there'd be a lot of the Bible we left out. And we really wanted to make sure we picked biblical texts that did a good job talking about these practices and these stories. So I hope that answers your question.
Dana in the question and answer asks, how will this curriculum work for a hybrid gathering?
Oh, that's such a good question. I love it. Okay, so you have a lot of options for a hybrid setting, for a virtual setting, for an in-person setting. And this curricula really scales and flexes to meet whatever setting you have. So things you definitely want to keep in mind. Your cafe discussion guides work great for online video chats. That's super awesome. The other thing that works great is like that practicing the practice at home. So much of what we have, you can send out in some kind of digital format. And I will say too, while we're on this point, in terms of online resources and how you can use them and what rights you have when you purchase the curriculum, any of like the resource pages or even like the session plans and stuff, you can share that with members of your congregation as long as it's done through something like an email or a password protected area on your website or a private Facebook group where only folks who are part of your congregation are in that group, and you have some control over who comes in and out of that group. So anywhere that you can get stuff to just your church family. Doesn't have to be strictly just members on your rolls, just people who are part of your church family. They are allowed to access this information. So if you buy the download versions of the different pieces, you're going to be able to do that control print, the control P on your computer, and basically print off a bunch of PDFs with only the select pages you want from those documents. And that makes it really easy to distribute in lots of different ways. Also, if you're looking to do things online with the families, the practicing the practice at home, you don't have to actually send that whole sheet home to families. If you wanted to, and especially if you were thinking more in hybrid terms, you could actually pick things from that sheet and send them out each week. So you send maybe 3 things from that sheet for 1 week, and then the next week you maybe send out 3 new things. So there's lots of ways to really take different pieces and different parts of this curriculum and use them in a hybrid setting. We also, and this was something I didn't touch on, we use a lot of online stuff, whether that's going to websites or visiting YouTube videos of different books that are being read or stuff like that. So a lot of this stuff translates very easily to online. If you're familiar with the Story Bible curriculum and how well that translated, because again, it was more relationship based, this is going to be similar in that regard. You're going to find a lot of this translates very well to a hybrid style ministry. There may be a couple of things you got to tweak, but it's going to be pretty minimal to get it. It works both in person or online.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. Carol has a question. Their pastor is trying to decide on his sermon schedule for the year and was wondering if there's anything that tells the lesson for each week that they could look at now.
Remember that preaching guide I mentioned? That is coming so very soon, like next week soon, or maybe the week after. I forget. Very, 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 very soon. That is what your pastor is going to want, and we've got it. So just, it's very, very soon. Be on the lookout for that. We will be announcing that. Great places to watch for that would be on our Facebook page. We'll also though have it on that. We'll be putting it up on the Follow Me website, so that www.pcusastore/follow me curriculum. It'll be there. There'll be lots of places for you to find it. Also, you can sign up for the email list that's all about Follow Me. And when we officially launch that, you'll also get an email saying that that is now available as well.
Awesome.
Yep.
Barbara asks, what other curricula will still continue to be produced? Will Growing in Grace and Gratitude still be published?
Yes, we are not stopping anything. We are full steam ahead. So everything that is going on now is continuing to go on. So there's still plenty of great curricula that you know and love that is not going anywhere.
And then another question from Barbara, what are the Flyaway picture books?
Ooh, yay. Okay. So if you have not heard about Flyaway, oh my gosh. Flyaway is our picture book line, and they have some fantastic, fantastic, fantastic picture books for children. So these picture books come from a myriad of different authors, and Flyaway really tries to embody diversity and inclusion and care for ourselves and care for the world. And so there are some phenomenal, phenomenal books that you can learn about. Matter of fact, if you go to our YouTube channel, you can see one of these books that just dropped last month, called Hiding Baby Moses, which is a really cute book that is Miriam's version of what happens to her brother as he floats in his basket down the Nile. And it's a cute book, but there are so many great books there. Some that have to do with faith, and some that just have to do with growing up in emotions, and other kinds of different things. We recently released a fantastic book, won a ton of awards. We got Michael W. Waters, Reverend Dr. Michael W. Waters, to write a book for us called For Beautiful Black Boys Who Believe in a Better World. And this is a fantastic book talking with kids about race and gun violence in a way that is not scary. And also there's a fantastic guide for leaders in the back that talks with you about how to talk with your kids about these difficult topics. So there's a lot in here. We've got Who is My Neighbor, which is our take on the Good Samaritan parable. We are also behind the Growing in God's Love Story Bible. So Flyaway Books has so many great things that you totally want to check out. I will drop their website in the chat so you can look at them, but they are phenomenal, phenomenal picture books that you are definitely going to want to use in your ministry. And I know a lot of people who have been using those and reading them online for their children's sermons during this COVID pandemic, and folks that have been using these books in lots and lots of different ways.
We had a webinar earlier this year with the author of For Beautiful Black Boys Who Believe in a Better World. It was wonderful.
It was. Michael is an amazing person.
It was great. Couple more questions. What will have to be printed for each child in multi-age?
So just the resource pages. And depending on what the resource pages are, they may not even need to be for each child. If you're familiar with like Cokesbury and some of the other curriculums where you have like like you have kids packets, we don't have anything like that. We try to keep expenses down as much as possible for you all. So it depends on what your resource pages are, whether or not you'd need a bunch for the whole class, or if you just need to use one of them. Because if it's just a poster and it's just an image that you're using to reference, then you don't have to print off more than one of those. If you're doing some kind of more of like a worksheet kind of thing where the kids are maybe it's a coloring sheet, or maybe it's like some kind of worksheet where they have to like write in some answers, or maybe there's a word search or something, then that you would have to print off more than one copy. But it's going to really depend on what the resource pages are, how many you would need to print off. So I hope that answers that question well. And I will drop my email in the chat a second time. I dropped it in earlier, but I will drop it in again.
Perfect.
So that everybody has it.
Patricia asks, how about the music singing component? Is there a music singing component?
So we do not have a music CD for this curriculum. However, you're going to find a lot of music woven throughout this curriculum. We've utilized a lot of YouTube videos where they do different songs for children. And so you're going to find a lot of music in this curriculum, even though it's not specifically like called out in its own separate component. It's very woven into the fabric of things. And in addition to that, you've also got the Congregational guide listing different song and hymn suggestions to use during your worship service. So there's a lot of different music elements weaving their way into this curriculum, but none that we have specifically like set aside in its own, like, here are all the songs you're going to learn this year. We don't have anything like that, but that's because, again, it's more of that integrated experience where it's woven in.
Awesome. Question from Barbara: does the adult curriculum assume that there's Wi-Fi in the adult classrooms?
None of our classrooms make the assumption that you will have Wi-Fi. We always offer 2 types of activities when there is a Wi-Fi activity suggested in the curriculum in anywhere for any age group, because we know not everybody does. Most people do, but not everybody does. Maybe you don't have a good like screen that you can use where you're at to be able to show to a lot of people, depending on how many people are in your group. So there are always options for and options without using Wi-Fi.
Awesome. It looks like, oh, there we go. Is Present Word going to continue to be published?
Yes.
Okay. That was one of the questions there. Is the adult reflection guide for a year, a month, a quarter? How does that work?
Per practice.
Per practice.
So it's going to be for a minimum of 4 sessions. In the case of our Lent units, it'll be 6. But it's always everything in this curriculum, all the leaders guides, all the adult reflection guides, everything but the posters is all done per practice. So it's one self-contained unit.
And those practices, they're typically 4 sessions per practice, except for those Lenten ones, right? Yes. That are 6 practices. Okay. Yes. That was another question that was coming through. Awesome. Someone asked about the recording. This will be available. Hopefully we can get it up early next week. We'll see if we can get it over the weekend, but definitely early next week. Does anybody else have any other questions? I know we're almost to 7 o'clock, but if we have one last question, we can go ahead and take that. Some people aren't able to see something that's being dropped into the chat. I will go ahead and make sure that after this is finished, I can email all of you who have been on the call with the information that Katie has. She's also going to get me some information that I can send to y'all after we are finished here. So hopefully that will work for those of you who aren't able to see the chat. One more question. If the primary use would be in experiential adult small groups versus classes, is there a track for that in the adult module?
I think my question to that is, say more about what you mean, because I have not quite followed you. So if that
Right.
person could post a follow-up, that would be stellar, because I am
All
not
right.
entirely 100% sure that I'm following what you're asking.
Okay, Sam. As we're waiting, maybe he or she can put that in there, but until then, I also just want to say thank you to Katie, and we at Association of Presbyterian Church Educators would love it if you pop over to our website as well to check out the resources that we have there. That's in the chat, but for those of you who haven't gotten the chat, www.apcenet, which is APCENET.org, as well as our Facebook page. Sam says, less instruction, more reflection on practice.
So it's both and. So for the adults, they have that adult reflection guide, which is the piece that, you know, stays with them. So they would use that like during and between the small group times. And then the small group times is going to sort of expand on things they might be reflecting on, where they'd actually have like activities or like more lecture-y things. You have those videos to watch as well. So it's a bit of both. It's a bit of reflection and a bit of instruction. We've kind of done a mix. So I hope that answers your question better, Sam. And if you have further questions, you can email me and we can continue that conversation even after this.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much, Katie, for sharing this with us. It looks awesome. I'm excited to look at the samples and download that 92-page document that you said. I got to make sure I have room on my computer for it.
Yeah. We wanted to make sure we covered all of it. So that meant 92 pages, y'all.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you again. And thanks to everyone who joined us this evening. Hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Thanks. Bye-bye.